Pudgy Penguins, one of the roughly 250 million projects that mimicked Bored Ape Yacht Club following its success, is seeing prices and trading volume sharply rise on news that it's releasing a line of toys with designs licensed from the community. There aren't a lot of details yet on what that actually means, but based on the tweet, I'm going to wildly speculate that it's some sort of rewards or maybe even a revenue share that could come to owners of the NFTs within this collection based on the sales of the associated toys. That's what intuitively I would think that means. In an NFT ecosystem significantly down from the peak of last year's mania, it's, I think, not just an interesting thought experiment, but also kind of interesting to see how projects are starting to innovate when it comes to that. How do you differentiate in kind of a post, Cambrian explosion, PFP project world? And I think that this is a pretty actually good idea. Whether it takes off or not, different question. Jen, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this is really interesting. And so my read on the story is that each of the NFT holders owns a non-exclusive license to the rights of that specific NFT. So it's personal and commercial. I read through it today. So basically, if you own one of the Pudgy Penguin NFTs, you can put it on t-shirts, make toys, make replicas, and sell that to the tune of $500,000. The contract does not allow you to make more than $500,000 over the 12-month period. And it sounds like the creators of the project have selected a few of the NFTs, licensed the image from the holders of those NFTs and have created these toys. And so this is really interesting to me because you can imagine a future where brands like Disney and Mattel are made from these NFT projects. And so often we ask, what am I getting when I buy one of these digital JPEGs? Well, maybe it's a share in a company like Mattel. Maybe you have a share in the company that's going to make toys for the next generation. And so I think it's really interesting when we look at some of these licensing agreements and some of these experiments that are coming out of these NFT projects in the form of toys. Now, my next question is, I wonder who's going to buy these toys. I hope it's not just the owner of the NFT. I hope that they can actually create this brand and this future that I'm talking about, because it feels like the next iteration of that side hustle culture, right? I can own this NFT, I can make an income, in this instance, up to $500,000 for 12 months. But I just don't know if the market is there, and I hope to see what happens. Will, what do you think?
Oh, I would definitely buy one of these just for put in the background, a little pillow. But let's take a look at the history of these Pudgy Penguins.
And now, Will's History Corner with Will Foxley.
Okay, so they're NFTs, so there's not that much history, but there is a little bit to dive into.
They were launched
year. First in, yeah, we got 1 year history in the books. June 2021, they were launched some fanfare. I saw them pop up on crypto Twitter quite a bit. They ousted the original founders in January this year, which we've seen with a few NFT projects, but typically the NFT projects seem to stick around the original team just because it adds more value to the project itself and to the NFT tokens as well. And then in April of this year, the brand was sold to a Los Angeles-based entrepreneur and Pudgy Penguin holder for 750 ETH in order to take more control over the collection's future. So we got a little history there, and we have more history in terms of NFTs themselves, as we see that this does happen from time to time. A lot of times the communities try to basically take control of the NFTs in order to pump the value of the NFT at the end of the day. Is really what it's about. There's also some licensing stuff that's involved with here. The other day we saw that Moonbirds change its licensing for NFTs to CCO from its original licensing scheme. What this basically means is that anyone can use Moonbirds licensing. They're able to commercialize it, but in the original sense, Moonbirds was an NFT, so only the NFT holder should be able to take that and commercialize the rights to it. Do not believe Pudgy Penguin has done that, and that's a good thing for Pudgy Penguin holders who want to make more money on their Pudgy Penguins. Adam, to you.
Yeah, I think that this is there's the headline part of the story, and then there's kind of the subtext of it. There's some subtext here which is interesting. So when you start talking about revenue flows, you are almost always in the world of cryptocurrency talking about taking something that is probably not a security and turning it into a security in the eyes of the US regulators. Now, what they're doing with Pudgy Penguins is interesting because it's a licensing deal where they're saying that owning the NFT means that you own certain rights. And so then it's not a company putting distributing money. It's a company who is licensing something back to you. So it's actually a really clever way to potentially use it in this fashion. Now, I don't know if that's going to work. I think it would be really interesting to talk to a lawyer like Preston Byrne, and kind of get their take on this type of thing. Does this become a security at that point? Because people have, for as long as they've been doing token projects, whether you're talking about NFTs or fungible tokens, everyone has always wanted yield. And as we, are looking at the merge coming up with Ethereum, that's another question there is, given that there will now be effectively a way to get yield natively from that asset, does that mean that that's a security? Because it's a big problem if these things become securities in terms of the way that they're used today. So I don't have any answers for us here, but I think that those questions are going to be the ones that I will be very closely watching. Jen?
I think it's going to be really interesting to watch that play out in a court, because you look traditionally at intellectual property, that's not a security. You can license intellectual property. If you have a film or series, you can license that to platforms like Netflix and Hulu and make money off of that. That's not a security. But then you have this NFT, you have this non-fungible token that's now attached to the intellectual property. I think it will be interesting to see how regulators connect those two, if they connect those two, and what conclusion they come to. I don't think it's going to be smooth sailing. But Will, last thoughts?
Yeah, last thought for me, I'm wondering, is it security if you're paid out in Pudgy Penguin pillows? That doesn't seem quite like the yield the Securities Administration is going to go for. But maybe that's the new securities law break.
Well, the way that the standard would be judged. I think you should join
the regulator, Will.
I should.
Okay.
Crack down.
But the way the standard is judged is more along the lines of, are you doing something to make this value, or are you relying on another company to do it? I think that with the way that the licensing terms are set up, you could make an argument either way, because the person has the ability to commercialize it without the company. But if the company is what they're primarily expecting, and especially if they buy it with the expectation that that's going to be true, then that's where you get into trouble. Again, like if there were like definitions for these things that weren't like, well, maybe it's this or maybe it's that, then it would be a lot more clear on this stuff. But a lot of this stuff is really kind of open to interpretation. Ultimately, we'll see what happens. My suspicion is that to the extent that there is any problem, Pudgy Penguins is going to run for a year or two anyways before we hear anything about it, just based on the pace that we've seen so far. So it's an interesting story.